Hey, this is Chris, keeping it real. How you doing? This window down. I know people sometimes have a hard time hearing me. So I have an update on that hamster test that I talked about a couple weeks ago. It was released May 21st from Hong Kong University. It's terribly difficult to find a really good write-up on how the test was conducted. Journalism being what it is today, all they do is summarize it in a couple paragraphs and expect you to just buy into it, which I don't. But I did find a much better explanation of how the test was run. So there were two sets of 3 cages. It was in a cabinet, so you had 1, 2, 3 cages from top to bottom on the left-hand side of the cabinet, 1, 2, 3 cages on the right-hand side of the cabinet. Each pair of cages was divided by a polyvinyl chloride divider with a hole cut in it. To which, for the first experiment, and they took 52 hamsters, a third of which evidently had coronavirus, 2/3 of which did not. I know that doesn't mathematically add up, but I'm just, let's just plow through this, shall we? And so in from what I understand, all these things ran simultaneously. So, like, they put all the hamsters in there at the same time and kept them in there for a week, and then took them all back out and then examined them by group. And so in the top set of cages there was a fan mounted to the polyvinyl chloride divider, which would blow through the hole, and it would just take all the air from the left-hand cage and put it into the right-hand cage. Therefore, all the coronavirus particles were not impeded in any way, shape, or form. In the second set of cages, the fan was left where it was, and a N95 mask was taped or affixed or some otherwise fastened to the right-hand side of that polyvinyl chloride divider. So the fan's on one side of the divider, the mask is on the other side, but it's right up there. Like, the only thing that's holding them apart is the divider material itself. And it was affixed in such a way that the part of the mask that you would normally see if someone was wearing it was pointing towards the left. That is, so the fan was blowing through the mask like you would go up and blow if somebody had a mask on and you blew right in their face. That's kind of the same deal. For the last part of the experiment, the fan was moved to the other side, I think. It was moved to the other side of the divider, but the airflow was still left to right. And the mask was affixed to the left-hand side of the divider, but the interior part of the mask faced the left. So to kind of imitate, now the fan could have been blowing directly into the mask and both were mounted on the left-hand side. I don't know that. I don't know that it makes much of a difference whether it was mounted on top of the mask, blowing left to right, or sucking air from the right-hand side through the mask. I don't know that it really matters. And so the results of this was that 2/3 of the hamsters in the first set of cages got sick, 1/3 of the hamsters in the second set of cages got sick, and 1/6 of the hamsters in the bottom cage got sick. And so that would seem to indicate that there's a great deal of value of wearing a mask. And it also points out that the only part I had a little trouble with was, well, why did which way the mask was pointing have much of a difference of any? And I think it just comes down to the design of a mask. The N95 mask is not designed to keep things out from you breathing it in. It's designed to keep things you breathe out from getting on people. And so that's the only rational thing I can think of. The real problem I have with the test is that putting 2 cages together, well, there's 2 problems with the test. One, N95 mask never fits your face perfectly, and so in this experiment they violated that principle because they did not leave room for any kind of air leakage around the masks, and so that is not a real world situation. So we really don't know if that 33% figure is accurate, and we don't know if that 16% figure is accurate. You might claim that depending on which way you point the mask, it's more effective in one direction to another. That would probably lead to a difference in infections, but we don't know that for sure, because they should have done like a 10% or 20% leak rate, build in a leak factor when they used the mask. Instead, they were affixed and they were airtight, and so that doesn't work. That's that, and moreover, not N95, surgical masks are not meant. If I've been saying N95, I'm sorry, but this is the third time I started this video, and I'm not going to start it again. I'm talking about surgical masks. So there could well be a difference. I don't know, right? The problem I really have is with the first, like what I would like to call the control group. You know, I can't think of a real world environment where, you know, somebody's like going to be sick and coughing into a fan, and it's going to be blowing on me for a week to see what happens. I mean, that's kind of what, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of what the experiment is. Like, well, here's all these hamsters in the left-hand cage, and they're just, you know, coughing, sneezing, breathing hard, and all this virus is just being uninhibitedly blown straight onto. Yeah, I can imagine that if you did that, a lot of people would get sick. But we don't do that. We don't get into that kind of situation. And so what they should have done, there's two possible control experiments they could have done, both of which would have made a whole lot more sense. One would have just been, just chuck all the hamsters into one cage and see what happens. I mean, that's right, huh? Or put the sick hamsters in one cage and put the other hamsters in the other cage and no fan and see what happens. That would have been a much more valuable control group than blowing coronavirus from a bunch of sick hamsters onto a bunch of well hamsters. I don't buy that. And so therefore you really can't draw any conclusions about the experiment, because the first condition was so faulty that it really doesn't, that the other conditions, the other results really don't mean anything. I mean, what if they just threw them all in a cage and only 50% of them got sick, or only 40% of them got sick? Then what would you say? Or what if they were in two different cages and there was no fan and 33% of them got sick? Well, then wearing a mask doesn't mean squat. But unfortunately, we'll never know, right? Because they're not going to rerun the experiment. Well, somebody might get smart about it, but no, this is all about getting people to wear masks and about getting people scared, and that's all it is. And you know, I hate to say it, but it is from China, and you know, I don't trust squat that comes out of China, because they lied about it the whole time. They could have done something back in November and December, and they chose to do nothing, and they let people fly back and forth to New York City and who else knows where, getting people sick. So I really don't have any respect, either morally or ethically, or what's the other word I'm thinking about? I don't know. Maybe you can fill in that gap for me. Anyway, I will provide the link to that. It's the best thing I've found so far. It's really just a picture. It doesn't really show how they did it, but I'm making some assumptions. But you know, when people don't want to give you data to go on, all you can do is assume certain things, and that's just the way it is, right? In the meantime, be safe out there, keep your distance. Supposedly that works. Do you really know? Oh boy, you know, it's a brave new world out there where nobody wants to tell you what the truth is so you can make up your own mind. No, let's just treat everybody like they're a bunch of children. That's a whole nother video, isn't it? All right, got any questions or comments? Leave them in the section below. Like and subscribe. We appreciate when you do. We'll see you on the next video.